That's the main difference between a keyboard and a piano. So to start off, if we see, and this is the piano that I have, it's just a Yamaha piano. You have a normal stand here for books or the score or whatever you have to put in here to read. You have like a cover just in case your piano doesn't get spoiled. For a piano, you also have pedals underneath. So these pedals, I mean, I hope you can see them, right? These pedals are usually only present in pianos. And like you can also get them for keyboards. It's not a big thing, but these pedals serve different purposes. Like they make the sound longer, or they quieten the sound, and they do all of that extra thing to the actual note sound that you're playing. So that's a basic introduction between the difference between a piano and a keyboard. The introduction about the piano. A keyboard, you may have, some of you may have a keyboard or a piano, doesn't really matter. A keyboard may also have these additional sort of buttons on it. Piano usually has very limited options. Here I just have like a volume button and a power off button. But a keyboard may have some additional buttons as well to like play some music or change the sound of what you're playing, like maybe like a harp sound or maybe a violin sound instead of a piano sound. That's all okay. It doesn't really matter. You can have either a piano or a keyboard for this course, and you can practice on either of them. So both of them are quite useful. So that's the basic introduction about how you should be, but the difference that you have to sort of know before you start off anything related to a piano or a keyboard. So next we can move on to the sitting posture. So you usually should have a stool for both, either a piano or a keyboard. So it can be any stool, but you shouldn't have a backrest. So unlike like a normal chair where you have a back support to lean onto, usually for a piano or a keyboard, if you're playing properly, if you want to practice well, then you shouldn't have any back support, because it ruins the posture, because your posture is not supposed to be leaning. It's supposed to be straight, supposed to be up front, and you're not supposed to be slouching, because that can really ruin your lower back. And yeah, that's the basic posture that you must have. So just sort of sit up straight, make sure that you're unslouching, and yeah, that's the basic posture. Now your fingers and your hands, you must learn to keep them properly on the piano as well. So you shouldn't be sort of leaning your hands down, like you shouldn't be pressing the keys like this. You shouldn't be too much, you shouldn't be leaning forward and pressing the keys. Your fingers and your hand posture is also very important, just in case, just to make sure that you don't have any aches or pains in your fingers or your wrist after you play the piano. So it's important that you ensure your hands are placed properly so that you don't have any trouble after playing, and then that hampers your practice, and that doesn't really help you because you just have a lot of pain. So must make sure that your hands are, when you're playing the piano as well, you must, or the keyboard, you must make sure that your hand is placed above the notes, not in front of the notes like this, nor below the notes like this. So it must be above the notes. Wrist must be raised. A lot of beginners might do this, they might do this, they might do this, right down, but you must raise your wrist up. So like this, just make sure that your wrist is up. It's not all the way down or in the middle. This really helps in efficient playing. It really helps you get to the notes in some pieces. For example, once if you're interested in playing the piano further and you go on to pursue like a course or like a profession, in some pieces you might really have to stretch, you might really have to move your fingers, your hand, your wrist. And if you're really down, you cannot do that efficiently because your wrist is not that mobile when it's all the way stretched down here. But if it's up, then you can really easily move your wrist anywhere you want. And that's quite the advantage of keeping your wrist raised high up. So ensure that your wrists are like this, ensure that your hand is placed above and not under, not in front, not anywhere there, just above, right above. But don't raise it too high because then you won't be able to touch the notes. Just keep it just keep it above the notes, just like this or like this. Just make sure once you do this, once you do it more, once you practice like this, you'll self-consciously do it like this. And you won't really have to correct your wrist anymore. You'll just, yeah, basically you'll just be doing it like this if you get into the practice of doing it. So make sure you do this every time you practice. And now we can move on to the notes at a present in a piano or a keyboard. I'll be referring to the instrument as piano throughout this course, if you don't mind, because the official term is a piano and a keyboard is a derivative of a piano. So both are okay, both are completely fine. But I'll just be referring to it as piano. So in a piano, you have 88 keys, as I said, and in a keyboard as well, you have 72 or 66 keys, but the model of arrangement of keys is the same, which means that in both the keyboard and a piano, there are repeated sequences of keys. So as you can see here on the backboard, which I've just drawn a little diagram, piano keys or keyboard keys. So these are the black keys at the top, and these are the white keys that are right below the black keys. So you have 7 basic keys, and you only have 7 keys in a piano or a keyboard per se. You don't really have any other keys. You only have these 7 keys: C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. The last one is C. It's just a repetition of the old one. But you only have these 7 keys in a piano or a keyboard, 7 distinct keys. Everything else is just a repetition of these keys. So here again, you see a C, but it's just a repetition of the old one here. And you might notice, why is there a C being repeated again? Well, if you look at the piano, which I'll just show you, the C, let me take, for example, the middle C, which is one of the most important notes that you should be knowing. It's in the middle. It's in the middle of your keyboard or piano. It's right in the middle. And one more thing to add on, you must always sit with your chest facing almost near middle C. So like this, not too far away from middle C, not on this side, but rather just almost the same level. So this is middle C. And as I've shown here, there's a D after C, then an E, F, G, A, and B. So if we trace the same pattern on the piano or a keyboard, get a C, get a D, an E, an F, a G, an A, and a B, and again you get a C. And you might notice, why is there a repetition? Well, that's the principle behind the keyboard or a piano. There's a repetition of notes after every 7 notes. So if I take the C here, and after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's a repetition of a C again. And if I go another 7 notes, I get a C again. And if I go from here a 7 note back, I get a C again. And then again a 7 notes, I get another C. And all of these C's sound the exact same. They sound the exact same. The only thing is the pitch is different, which means one is at a higher pitch, the other one is at a lower pitch. So it's more deeper, one is more shrill, it's more high pitched. So now we've learned the basic keys in a piano. We have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then C. So this section is the middle portion of your piano or keyboard. And it's very important because a lot of starting songs will revolve around this section itself. So now what we'll do is you can take out your hands and just keep them on the individual keys. So here you have middle C. So let's focus on the middle section first with your right hand. Just keep your thumb on middle C, your index finger on D, your middle finger on D, and so on F and on G. You just keep them like this and make sure you don't flatten out your fingers, since it's not really efficient to play like this. Rather, you should curve your fingers, make sure they're curved and your wrist is raised high again. It's not too high, just make sure your wrist is raised high. So now C with your thumb, D with your middle finger, E with your middle finger, F with your ring, and G with your index, your pinky finger. So you can sort of go slow if you're a beginner, or else if you know most of this, then you can proceed fast. C, D, E, F, G, and also come back on the way down. G, F, E, D, C. You can do it a few times back on the way down. Make sure there's a rhythm, and don't make sure that there's no breaks. Make sure that you have the correct posture while playing. Now that we're done with the right hand, we can move on with the left hand as well. So it's important to practice with both hands. It's not just one hand that requires practice. Usually the left hand requires more practice than the right hand. So this is a middle C. If you've listened carefully, then you'll know that if I move 7 notes back, I get another C, and that C is lower than the middle C. So you can take that C for your left hand, because the C is usually the starting note that we teach most beginners. So the C on the right hand, here you have the middle C, and with your left hand, you can place it on bass C. This C is called bass C. Since it's in the bass part, it's lower than middle C. So use your pinky finger and place it on bass C, and then on D, then your middle on E, then your index on F, and your thumb on G, just like you've placed it here. So C, D, E, F, G, C, D, E, F, G. And with your left hand, you can now press the individual notes and press them with the rhythm: C, D, E, F, G. Then you can come all the way back down if you want: E, G, F, E, D, C. Make sure that your fingers are curved and not like flattened out, because that won't really help, especially when you're playing hard pieces, if you want to pursue more. So C, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, C. In C, D, E, F, G, F, D, E, C. So once you play this way, you can now use both hands together. For beginners, it might be a bit tough. Many beginners will maybe play it without a rhythm, which is okay. It's best to use both hands at first and get used to the feeling of playing with both hands. So both hands, index on, you have your pinky on C, bass C, thumb on middle C, and let's start all the way up and then back down. So C, D, E, F, G, G, F, E, D, C. So you can do that a few times. So this is a basic exercise to usually get control of your fingers, your finger muscles. And it's important that you practice this. Many beginners, you must be practicing this. Even for intermediate levels, this is the backbone of all the intermediate exercises. We usually play scales which are much longer, and they go a lot of ways. We play many keys, you usually play many different notes. So even for beginners, you must make sure that, for intermediate level, you must make sure that you get the connected rhythm right, and you don't play very distorted. You don't really play in a very low manner. You should make sure that the keys are connected properly with a proper rhythm. So that's the basics of playing. So now let's move on. Now that we've covered a 5-note thing, G, F, E, D, C. Now that we've done this, let's move on to something a bit harder. From C to C, remember if I've told you, C, if I go up a seven notes, if I go up from a C, I get another C. And actually, fun fact, this C to C, or for a fact from any note, I go to another note, the same note though, so like a D to a D, or like an E to an E, this distance is called 1 octave, and it consists of 8 notes, including the top note. 7 notes in between, but 8 notes including the top note. So C to C is an octave. If I take like a random example, an A to the next A is also an octave, 8 notes. So let's, now that we've done these 5-note playing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, now we can go on to something a bit harder, that is playing one entire octave. So it's from a C to a C, or like a D to a D. So you can start off with your right hand on C, middle C. It's important that you start off with middle C, if you're starting off the piano, because as you start off with other Cs or with other notes, it gets a bit more harder, since you really have to make your hand position right. You have to really raise your wrist a bit higher for this. So let's start with middle C, thumb on middle C. One octave is from middle C to this C, what we call treble C. So this was middle C, this was bass C, middle C, treble C. So from middle C to treble C, let's continuously play with the right hand. And let's see how that goes. Well, you might wonder, well, you have 5 fingers, but you have 8 notes to cover, all the way up and all the way back down. How exactly do you do that? Well, you obviously have to reuse some of your fingers in this. Obviously, you cannot use both hands because your hand will be occupied with something else. So let's see how to do that. So you start off with your thumb on middle C, and you keep your 5-finger position. That's the same. But you go C, D, E, and then if you go F right here, and then if you go G again, you might just run out of fingers and you have 3 more notes to cover, A, B, and C, but you've just magically run out of fingers and you really need to do something, and you can't bring your left hand into it because left hand is doing something else. So how exactly do you do this? So with this, you need your thumb on C, D, E, and once you get to E, you need to take your thumb and turn it over and press it and use it to press F. And then now from F to the next C, we were going from C to C, right? So we have a C to go to, and there's 4 notes and you have 4 fingers there. So from F, you can just use all your fingers to get to the next C. From C to C, I have an octave. To repeat, C, D, E. I'll be running out of fingers soon, so I need to change. I need to use my thumb, bring it all the way to the back, use it to press the F, the next note. Then I have 4 notes left and I have 4 fingers, so I can just move on smoothly. From any note to any note, you can do this. Let's say from D to D, you have an octave, as you can see. And let's start off. D, E, F. You need to switch because obviously 8 notes I need to switch. So D, E, F. Turn your hand, bring your wrist up, switch, keep your thumb on the next note. G, A, B, C, D. So D to D we've covered by using this method of switching and bring your thumb over. And usually this you can practice at home. You can practice your scales. This is what you call playing scales. So the scale for C here, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. You can also practice on the way back down. So from C all the way back down. So that's how do you do it? How exactly do you do that now? Because you again have 5 fingers, but you have 8 notes. So that we use the same method of switching over. So my pinky was on this C, the treble C right here. So let's start off with that. So we have a treble C. I come down here, B, A, G, F. I have 3 more notes to cover and I've run out of fingers. But fortunately, we can turn over. We can use our spare fingers over here and just turn them over and play the other 3 notes. It's not an issue. From F, you just take your middle finger, you turn it over and you play the next E. Then you have 2 fingers left and 2 notes left. So you can just sort of calmly do that. So to reinstate, you have C, B, A, G, F. Then we have 3 notes left. So take your middle finger, go on to the next note, E, D, C. So forwards and backwards. So that's how you do it. Now we'll move on to the left hand. We've just talked about how to do the right hand. You can rewatch the recording. If you have any issues, you can always ask me as well in the group. So for the left hand, it's a bit more tricky since it's the left hand and it's usually the non-operational hand for most people. So we start off with bass C. This is middle C. You go down an octave, get bass C. So bass C, your left hand's pinky finger on bass C. Then I need to cover an octave here, but I only have 5 fingers again. So obviously we need to use the method of crossing some of the fingers over to get to the extra notes. So bass C, now let's see how it goes. Bass C, D, E, F, G. I have 3 more notes, A, B, and C, but I've run out of fingers here. So I can still cross over though, it's not an issue. So I can take my middle finger. I use my middle finger here for the right hand. I can use the middle finger here for the left hand. I'm going to take it over and cross. So from a G to the A, I'm going to cross my middle finger over. So A, B, C. So let's do it again. C, D, E, F, G. Let's cross over. A, B, and C. Now if I have to come back down, I have the same crossing over principle again. So we have here C, B, A. If I just continue on G and F, I might just run out of fingers. And crossing over with the last finger is not always easy because you have to turn your entire hand, and it's not comfortable at all. So C, B, A, once I've reached A, I cannot continue on with my 4th finger and 5th finger, because if I do, I won't be able to cross over efficiently. So at my 3rd finger itself, I must cross over and use my thumb to get to the next note. From an A to a G with my thumb. With my thumb to get to the next note. I have 4 notes left in my octave and I have 4 fingers left. I can just calmly complete the notes with my 4 fingers. Do it again. C, B, A. I turn G, then 4 notes, 4 fingers, F, E, D, C. So this is the basics, how you do it. Let's say let's use both of our hands now. It's better to start off with both hands itself, since it's better to get used to how it feels while playing with both hands. Sometimes the coordination might not be there, but once you practice more, the coordination will increase and you'll just do it subconsciously. So let's start off. C, E, F, G, turn, A, B, C, B, A, G, F, B, E, C. Again. So that's how you play it. And you can practice that how much ever you want. It's always good to practice more. It's never a harm. So you can just keep on practicing that. That's one of the exercises that you can do. You can do it faster and faster. If you get better at it, you can always do it faster. And for example, if you get better at doing it slow, you can always do it faster. And you can always continue doing it faster and faster until you get perfect at it. But you must make sure that when you're doing it slow, you do it perfectly. And then you can move on to a slightly higher speed, because if you don't do it perfectly and doing it slow, then it won't really make a difference if you do it fast, because you won't do it right. So we've covered the basic notes, how to play them normally, how to do some of the exercises that we have. So now let's look at so this exercise, you don't need to start on middle C. I've just started on middle C just as an example, because it's usually for beginners or intermediate levels, you always start on middle C for these. You can start on any note, and you can, for example, if I take an F, some random note like an F, I can do the same thing. I just have to cross over. So the exact same thing you can do on any note you want. So we've covered the white notes. We've covered all of the white notes. We've covered the names of the white notes, as you can see on the blackboard here. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Then there's a repetition, obviously. And we've covered all of them. So now you must be wondering the black notes as well. And the black notes are called sharps. Or flat. The white notes usually are much easier to play, since they're much more accessible than your black notes. Your black notes are at the top. Just make sure that you lift your wrist up when you play the black notes, since they are harder to reach than your white notes. So These black notes, we call them sharps. For example, if you can look at the board here, let me just take a marker. You can look at the board. I'll just come around. It'll be easier to teach that way. So if you look at, there's a C here, the C note. Let's say this is middle C, for example. It can be any C. So you have a C, and then you have a black note right up on top of it. And this note we call a C sharp. So a C sharp. So this is the notation for a C sharp. So however, let me just make it a bit bigger in case you don't see it. A C, this is C right here, and there's a black note on top of it. It's a C right here. There's a C sharp, a black note right on top of it. It's a C. Then you have a sharp, a black note. Black notes, you can call them sharps, and we usually call them sharps. It gets more complicated as you move, as you get better and better, as you learn more and more theory. The theory gets more and more complicated. So this C here, this is called C sharp, as I told you. And how do you represent a sharp in terms of musical notation? Well, you put like a hash at the top. So let me just write it more cleaner. A C and a sharp. So that's how you write sharp notation. So you have a C here to represent the black note on top of it. That's right next to it. You call it a C sharp. And how do you represent it? Well, you write C and you write the hash on top of the C. That means C sharp. We refer to the black note there. We have to represent, for example, let's say this one, this note, this black note right here. That's right above the A. I need to call that an A sharp. So A, the black note will be an A sharp. The black note's an A sharp. But to represent, for example, this note that's right on top of F, the black note that's right on top of F, it would be again called an F sharp. So an F sharp, the black note. So that's sharps. Now you also have another concept. So we just talked about sharps. So C sharp, F sharp, A sharp. This would be G sharp. This again, we have a C, so C sharp. And this we have a D sharp right above here. So the next concept we'll be talking about are flats. And if you can, you can probably read them. So flats, so these are sharps, these black keys, we have sharps. And the next concept is flats. We'll be talking about flats. What exactly are flats? Well, let's say I take an example. A is the note here. This note, which I talked about, the black note, it's right above G, but it's also right below A. So this black note can be called a G sharp, as we talked about, it's right above a G sharp. But if I want to refer to this note in terms of A and not G, because this note has two companions, it has both G and A, one before it, one after it, and it's right in the middle. So if I look at G, then according to G, the note would be G sharp because it's a sharp, it's right in front of G. But if I want to talk about it in terms of A, then I would call this an A flat. So basically, a flat is when you come back a note. So how exactly does that make sense? For example, let me take this note here. It's right here, the black note, right here in front of D, right above D. So right above D, this would be a D sharp. Since it's also right below E, would be called an E or an E flat. So what exactly is in, how exactly do you represent flats? Well,
With a B.
sharps, you use this hashtag notation. For flats, you write a small B like notation, a B that's right above the note. So D sharp or E flat. For example, this would be F sharp or G flat. And this would be, for example, G sharp or A flat. This would be A sharp or B flat, right? B flat. We have different ways of representing these notes, and you can just remember them. You can probably, it's always good to memorize these common things, and that's what we have for today's lesson. Let me give a few exercises. Maybe you can practice these at home for your practice. So the first one obviously is your scales, your 1-octave scales with both hands. You can do them separately with one hand as well. And then maybe you can, if this is a bit hard for you, you can do the 5-note thing as well. So these are, this is for your first class. Feel free to ask any doubts in the WhatsApp group. And yeah, that's about it for your first class. And we'll meet again next week. Thank you, and hope you had a good time. Hope you've understood some of these concepts. If not, you can always ask in the next class and in the WhatsApp group as well. It doesn't really matter. And thank you, and have a nice day.